Welcome to Manga Mac TV News. It's the news that interests us and we think should interest you. This is news for the week of September 13th, 2021. And we're going to get into our first story here. It's about how Kiyoshi Kobayashi, who has been voicing Jigen Daisuke, is retiring. And he is going to be replaced by Akio Ohtsuka.
Have I told you guys how much I love Jigen? Have we had this conversation?
I think you mentioned it maybe once, but we haven't had.
God.
Yeah.
I love Jigen. I am most familiar with the dub, right? That was on Adult Swim back in the day, which is excellent, but I have watched some of it in Japanese, and his voice is so distinctive.
Yeah,
it's
you
really
can tell
impressive.
he's very old, and so...
Yeah.
In like the previous part 5 and part 4, he was still doing the voice, and it's like, bless you, sir. But you can tell like he doesn't quite have like the energy for some scenes, or I don't want to critique too much.
I think he dropped off pretty fast because during a woman called Mina Fujiko, I actually thought his voice was like great, and he was still like mega old then. But then by the time they made part 4 the Italian one?
I think part 4 was after that.
Yeah, so by the time they made part 4, which wasn't that long, it was only like a year or two after that, I felt like. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it was much after that. But like already, like that distance, he sounded a lot more tired. And it was like, it's still very impressive. His performances are very good, but like you could definitely feel like just the weariness in his voice.
To be fair, Jigen is a pretty world-weary old man.
Yes.
Which is why I like him so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny. I actually am terrified of guns. I hate guns, but I frequently like sharpshooter type characters like him, just like gruff and smoking all the time and shooting people.
Yeah, so like the really funny thing about this, if you're a fan of the dubs, is that Akio Ohtsuka does the voice for Batou in Ghost in the Shell.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
And the English dub is Richard Epcar. And Richard Epcar also does the English dub for Jigen in a lot of the famous. And now Akio Ohtsuka is going to be doing the dub for Jigen. So like weirdly synced up voice actors in a way.
Well, when you've got a type, right?
Yeah.
And I think that Batou and Jigen are not the exact same character type, but there's an overlap there.
Yeah, they can both be very like sarcastic and cynical,
right,
but also just kind of goofy sometimes.
And you know that they're like secretly really soft.
Yeah,
like super soft. Like Jigen is like Jigen's probably like I want to watch like the full length like what was it? There was like that Wolverine movie with Hugh Jackman, and he's like with the little girl. Like I feel like you could do that with Jigen and some little girl, and you'd be like, yeah, this is 100%. Like he's just a soft dad the whole time.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's like, because there's so many episodes of Lupin, I wouldn't be surprised if there's actually episodes of like, oh, Jigen has to take care of something or somebody.
Yeah. Well, there's one. I think the one that was on Adult Swim was part 3.
Yes.
Red Jacket Lupin.
Red Jacket, yeah.
And I think there's an episode there where he's like, oh, I hate women, and he like falls in love with like a woman, and she like, I don't remember all of what happens, but he's so like crusty and grouchy the whole time. He's like, I hate women, and we're like, you don't hate women at all, actually, though, do you?
Oh, actually, part 2 is the Red Jacket one.
Oh, okay, yeah, so part 2.
Part 3 is kind of like the red-headed stepchild, because that's the pink jacket. People don't like that one.
Oh yeah.
At least they didn't.
Remember.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Interesting.
Sorry, I was gonna say it's nuts because the voice of Lupin III in Japanese has been done by Kannichi Kurita for like since 1995. But prior to that, it was like Yasuo Yamada who was doing it from like the 70s, and like that was the classic Lupin III voice. But now I'm so used to like Kurita now. I think of Kurita as like the Lupin voice. So I wonder how long it will be before Akio Ohtsuka will just be, oh yeah, that's the Jigen voice now.
Yeah. I've been watching a lot of Sesame Street because I have a toddler, and it's really interesting to hear when the puppeteers change after a couple decades, because HBO Max has all of them. And you're like, oh yeah, that's absolutely Jim Henson as Ernie or whatever. and then like a couple, like a decade later, like, oh, that's not Jim anymore. That's somebody else. And like they're really good. So you can't tell, like you wouldn't be able to tell if you hadn't just heard him in like the last episode, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you get so used to something after a while.
I guess we should look forward to hearing Akio Ohtsuka voice Jigen whenever they make an anime out of the new like Isekai Lupin the Third. That's like the manga's going around right now.
Oh, is there an Isekai Lupin now?
It's called Lupin the Third Neighbor World Princess.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Neither do I. I've read some of it.
I don't know how I feel. I mean, Lupin's done everything, so I guess this makes sense to some degree, but
They've been a ton of like case closed crossovers with Lupin the Third. So
yes,
whatever,
but
anything goes.
The case closed crossovers make sense. There's like they're both ostensibly crime action series. Like there's a certain amount of that makes sense to me. I'm not sure I understand the isekai thing, except that like I guess
Isekai's hot.
Yeah, it's hot, and it's not like Lupin hasn't saved princesses before.
Yep. All right, let's move along with our news items. The second news item I have today is that they have announced a anime adaptation for Kengo Hanazawa's current series, Under Ninja. So this is weird to me, and I think this is just weird to me because I keep forgetting that Under Ninja already has like 6 volumes out. But it comes out at such like a very slow pace. Like they skip a bunch of. This comes out in a weekly magazine, and like it only comes out like maybe once a month. Because obviously Kengo Hanazawa does so much like artwork, and it's a strange story. It's like a deep story about how ninjas still exist in modern day, and they're like the most elite of elite like black ops in the world. There's a lot of camouflage that's happening, like active camo, and that's like kind of interesting to see represented in like art form. My thing about this series is Kengo Hanazawa has moved away fully from like analog drawing and has gone fully digital. And it really kind of shows that like he does a lot of things where like he's posing in certain like forms and they take a picture and then they just kind of transfer that over and he kind of redraws that a little bit. Like the proportions of all the human characters are way too perfect. And it gives me bad flashbacks, Star Fox, to the end of Kengo Hanazawa's I'm a Hero, where it was copy paste everything. So that's not happening here. But I do feel a little strange. Also, recently I just rewatched the Munben episode with Inio Asano.
It's a classic.
Yeah, but Inio Asano does a lot of digital like photos and like takes like backgrounds and like of towns and then he puts them in and then he does a ton of work like redrawing them to make them into like his own art. But I feel like with backgrounds it doesn't. I don't know. I'm kind of used to it. And maybe it's weirder for me because like it's with the characters. I'm getting also flashbacks of Gun Dragon Sigma. Darfox, do you remember Gun Dragon Sigma by Buchihara?
Yes.
To the creator of like Cobra. Morgana, I don't know if I've talked about this manga before, but Gun Dragon Sigma was a manga created where they had a female model dressed as this character and they shot like 3,000 photos of her doing like various poses and they just like put that in the manga page and then like use computer graphics to make backgrounds and things like that.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so a human model is like the main character just posing and like it's an interesting idea. It's something that I think it was 80s, 90s when it was done, so
I've seen things similar to that in like Western comic, like indie comics, not in anything like published or distributed through like a major publisher. And it's always kind of bizarre, like uncanny, weird. But yeah, an interesting tactic. I always feel like making things a little too realistic in comics is it almost takes me out of it a little bit. Like it's too much information almost.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that comics work so well is because it's simplified and you can just your brain like processes visual information really quickly, right? But it is definitely. I mean, I'm sure it seems like it would be less work. Although maybe it's more work because you have to take all the photos.
Yeah, you have to take the photos and then you have to like process them and you have to make it look like it's more of a manga. So it is a lot of work. But I'm with you, Morgana. It feels like a little off. And also the thing about Under Ninja is like the story moves at such a slow pace. I don't know. I don't understand how they're gonna adapt it to anime. Like what part of the story is gonna be able to like fit into the anime? It takes so long for things to happen in that series. But I guess we will see. All right, let's move on to our next news item, which is this follow-up when we were talking about DC getting into webtoons. They've released one called Justice Runs in the Family. And let's see, Darfox, you're saying that we had some pushback on this, right?
Well, I don't know if it was pushback, but there was definitely a lot of hot takes from people who don't normally really talk about like manga or webtoons, Korean comics. People unfamiliar with the format, but suddenly there was a lot more like old comic eyes on the format, and some of them just did not know how to process it, and I thought it was
like the scrolling format of like manhwa.
Yeah, like there was a lot of like painting as it being something inferior and stuff like that. Which I mean, people can have their opinion about like what the preferences are. Like, I mean, I myself really like the page format and having 2-page spreads that manga has, but like I personally don't really consider it like inherently more artistic or anything than any other format.
No, definitely. And webcomics have been like scrolling like this forever. Like there's a lot of, I don't know. There's a lot to be said about making something for a specific format, right? And doing something that works best in a certain format. But the thing that gets me about this is actually, so it's like Wayne Family Adventures, so it's like the Bat family, right? It's Bruce Wayne and all his various adopted Robins and extra Bat people. And it just seems like a family dramedy sort of thing, which is like 100% what I think a huge portion of comics fans have wanted for a long time. We keep getting these like heady like superhero stories when like there are a lot of people who just want to read like about their characters having like interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, like I actually really like the extended Bat family. There's a lot of like cool and fun characters, but you wouldn't catch me dead reading one of the fucking Nightwing comics or like,
right? Because
it's just like, I don't doubt there's good stuff in there, but like what I want to read is not going to be represented very well. It's just going to be part of a cog of whatever like the current mandate is of the editorial or whatever. We shouldn't get too much in the weeds about like superhero comics, but like I do feel like that this is like kind of what I wanted from the Bat family,
Yeah, and I mean, I think I've said this before about like X-Men, which is like obviously Marvel, but I just want X-Men to be like the school drama, right? Like I just want to like see the kids at school doing the things that they do, but they're like mutants. And that's rare also when it happens, because it's there, but it's always like there's like the bigger picture stuff. And I think, for a lot of comics fans, a lot of superhero fans who have been into it for a long time, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the superhero, superhuman stuff, and I think that's totally fine, and there's a place for that. But I also want the other stuff. I want that to exist for those of us who grew up reading shoujo manga who want more of that.
Now, ultimately, this is exposing like a lot of people to something that they really haven't really seen, which is a good thing, and I hope some of them kind of come away with some sort of education. Some of them definitely are not, and then they're coming away with just like a lot of like knee-jerk reactions. But whatever, like that's the nature of the internet, I guess. I think this is doing huge numbers. I think this is doing like a lot of clicks and a lot of like buzz. So like, I think all these like comic companies are going to be paying attention to this.
I just skimmed through all 3 chapters of this, and this is totally fine and fun. There's a point where like everybody's fighting over the last cookie at the dining room table.
No, it's not the content; it's the format that people are a little bit like miffed at.
I'm sure people are annoyed with the content too, but that's beside the point. It looks great. It looks like a lot of fun, and I think it's smart for DC to do this. And I'm very, very curious. I think you're right, Darfox. I think other companies are going to be looking closely at how this does for them, because webcomics are big, right? Webtoon is big. Tapas. It's huge, and I'm really curious as to how it's changing the comics market and how it will continue to change things going forward.
Yeah, we talked about how like there's this massive fan base of comic book characters because they all watch the movies and stuff, but there's never that crossover for the comics to like the actual comic medium. I think this is going to be a lot easier entry point for a lot of people.
Oh, for sure. and the movies should be like this too. All I'm saying, I think I told you guys off air last week, but we watched Birds of Prey finally, because I don't watch a lot of the DC movies, and it was very good. I really enjoyed it, but it was so violent.
Yep.
And it just doesn't need to be. It just doesn't need to. I get it. People like that, I guess, but like, it was a fun movie. I didn't need to watch Harley break a man's leg in 5 places. I mean, like, I don't mind violence, and I don't mind a little bit of like naughty slapstick, but I don't know. It can be excessive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
But anyway.
Yeah, let's move on to the next news item. I have a follow-up on a previous news that we reported on, which is on Tatsuki Fujimoto's Look Back, the one-shot that he did about a girl who was drawing manga and becomes friends with like Shut-In. We reported on the news because there was a tweet put out by Jump Plus saying that for the volume release of Look Back, they're going to re-edit what they already edited. And what happened was, when Look Back originally came out, there's a scene where a serial killer thing happens, and the first edition of the story, which is actually still up on like Jump Plus and the Viz app, I think, when Darfox checked, is the killer says, "The voices from the paintings on the walls mocked me." And a lot of readers were like pushing back against that, saying that, you know, it was a very like negative representation of like mental illness. And so they edited it, they changed it, and now the killer was saying, "I could have been anyone, I just want to kill anybody." And then there were so many people who also pushed back on that, saying like, "You're messing with the author's original intent, how dare you." So for this third revision for the volume release, it came out this previous week, and I bought it and I read it, and it says, now the killer says, "They stole the art I posted online." Which I don't know how I feel about that last version.
Yeah, because like, there's a real problem with art theft.
There is. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and you know, not to say, I don't think there's a right answer to this problem, really. Like, the killer's gonna kill somebody for some reason, and somebody somewhere is not gonna be pleased, I guess, as to the reason.
Oh, you won't believe like the reviews for like this over on Bookwalker, where people are like, "Oh, this is so great. The second version was such trash because they changed it without like doing things, and this third version is so perfect." I'm just rolling my eyes at that.
Well, I do feel there's a little bit of a mountain or molehill happening here, because it's literally like a couple lines in this whole story.
Mm-hmm.
But also like it I feel like it's kind of not up to us. Like, really, like, if we're talking about like artistic integrity, like it's between like Tatsuki Fujimoto and the editors. It's between them. And if he feels he's being fucking fucked over, and something that like he feels very, you know, I could disagree all day, but maybe he feels it's very important for there to be like all these allusions to like mental illness causing this tragedy. Maybe he feels very strongly about that or whatever. Like, that's his business. But like, we don't really know like where these changes came from. Like, we don't know if it's Tatsuki Fujimoto. We don't know if it's mutual. We don't know if it's like the editors just pushing this upon him. And like, I really doubt. Like, Tatsuki Fujimoto is such a darling right now. I really doubt the editors are like forcing him to do this kind of stuff, and like quote unquote ruining his story. Like, that sounds so like incredulous to me. Like, I'm so incredulous about that.
What's really funny to me is that, like, I think even like a decade ago, we probably never would have heard about the pushback to begin with, or if we had and they did decide to change it, they probably wouldn't have said anything and just quietly changed it. Like, things change between the, you know, the magazine and the tankobon all the time, right? That happens. It could have been totally like a non-issue, but like mountain out of a molehill. Like, it's just because people are talking about it because of the nature. I think specifically the nature of the internet, and the fact that all this news is so readily available. You know, it almost there are a lot of benefits to the internet age. There are a lot of benefits. I mean, we get things so quickly now, right? And I think that's great in a lot of ways. I also am the old lady who's like, back in my day, we had 3 manga and we waited. We had to watch whatever was on Cartoon Network. Which reminds me, I saw a car drive by today with Goku on the side of it.
Nice.
Speaking of Cartoon Network. But yeah, I think this would have totally been a non-issue even a decade ago. And certainly, beyond that, like, I always assume it's like young people reading this because it's Shonen Jump. Obviously, I think it's a lot of 20 and 30 somethings actually reading Shonen Jump these days. But I always think like the age that I was getting Shonen Jump, like 13, 14 years old, like in magazine form, I would never have known any of this. None of this would have been like public information. It would have been so hard to like dig it up in English on the internet,
Yep, it's all out there now. Dark Fox, in terms of like the intent, at least when they put out that first tweet talking how they change it again, they said they had talked with the creator. So,
wait, which change?
The third change.
The final one.
The final one, yeah. They said
Okay.
like upon talking with the creator, we have decided to change it. Edit it again. That's what it was. And so this edited version is they stole the art I posted online, which I don't like. The first thing I thought of when I read that was like, this reminds me of the horrible Kyoto Animation,
Yeah, Hyoani. So.
Yeah.
arson attack.
Which
thing.
which I thought that was the original version. I thought the original version was they stole my art, and that's why they changed it. I thought that was like the whole situation, but I guess it's a little more complicated than that.
I don't know, but that's the version that is there in the volume, and so yeah, it's like Morgana said, whatever version you post, someone's gonna have an issue with. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, let's just move along to the final bit of news. So the final news is the newest issue of Young Animal came out, which is the magazine that Berserk runs in or ran in at this point. It was issue number 18 for year 2021, and it was a tribute to Kentaro Miura. So much they filled it full of his like color illustrations. So many people like Chika Umino, who makes March Comes in Like a Lion, was like really good friends with him. So she wrote a really loving tribute. But the thing that stood out to me the most is the final thing in the volume, the final thing in the magazine, which is Koji Mori. He's the manga artist behind Jisatsu, aka Suicide Island, and also Holy Land. Dark Fox and I talked about his manga a lot in the beginning days of Manga Machinations. I did not realize that Koji Mori was best friends with Kentaro Miura. They knew each other since they were 15. And so Koji Mori wrote a really long manga talking about like how they met and their friendship, and how Miura was always bugging him to write like their memoir, like the story about them. And Mori would be like, why do I gotta write it? Why shouldn't you write it? And Miura was like, listen, do you really want me to write something like about like slice of life? I can't do that. I'm the fantasy guy. So it's really sweet. I cried a lot reading that. And it's basically Koji Mori's declaring that he is now going to write that memoir now. And it's going to be called Mori-chan and Ken-chan. And so that will definitely be happening in the future sometime. Though I don't know when, because like Koji Mori's currently writing like the prequel to Suicide Island called Murder Island. And also he's still writing Sousei no Taiga, the other manga about a group of teens going back to the prehistoric age of like early man. So if he does this, it'll be a third manga, but yeah, I can see him doing it. He'll do it for his bestie. So it's a very sweet thing. Just want to report on that. And that will be it for Manga Mac TV news for this week. I want to remind everybody, if you haven't, please make sure to go listen to our 7-year anniversary podcast with Mieri Hidanishi. It should be out by the time this goes up. But that's it. Beep 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 beep. Bye.